How is everybody doing? How's everybody feeling? Today, we're going to talk about what if Marvel re-releases these comic books on their own platform? What if they re-release these comic books on their own platform? We're going to take a deep dive and we're going to go talk about what are the pros and cons if this was to happen. So join us, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's get this party started right.
The Green Llama strike.
That is right. That is right. We are going to talk about comic books and what if Marvel re-releases the comic books on their own platform? What would that do to the comic books on Vivi? And what would that do to everybody's collection? Let's talk about it. Let's like the video and subscribe to the channel, man. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. If you guys can help us out, it'll be greatly appreciated. And also, Chiko Roku has free NFTs every single day. That is right. I'm going to go check them out real quick to see if they got anything new today because, oh, they do. They got something new today. Let's go check it out. Look at this piece right here. Can I get it? Oh, no. That's a really cool piece. Legendary exclusive art for art club only. Join now. Oh, I don't know what that is, but I'm going to have to join. So you guys can come and get your free collectibles every day while supplies last. Sometimes they release a collectible that has a lot of mint size, a large edition size, and everybody can get one. And sometimes they release something that is a little bit more scarce. And so when you try to get it, it might have been already done. Like this one right here. I ran out because I got here too late. But later on this afternoon, I will come back and check out the platform to see what else we got going on. And without any further ado, let's talk about comic books. And let's talk about what would happen if Marvel re-releases their comic books in their own platform. What would that do to the comic books on Vivi? Would that affect us? Let's talk about it. I made a list of all the pros and all the cons if this was to happen. What would happen if Marvel re-releases comic books on their own platform? Let's talk about the pros and cons. First, we're going to talk about the pros of the first edition book. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the pros and cons of the first edition comic book and the second edition comic book. Let's say today you woke up and Marvel releases their own NFT platform with their own comic books. What would that do to, one, your comic book collection, and what would that do to the Vivi collection? Well, I'm going to tell you what I think. But before we do, let's get into it. The pros, these are the pros of the first edition book. These are the pros, and I'm going to get into the cons as well. So the pros of you having the first comic book on the blockchain, because the first pro is obviously we're the first in the blockchain. So regardless of how many times they reprint Amazing Fantasy 15 next year, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, because it could potentially happen, and it's definitely going to happen. If you think that these comic books are going to be the only time ever put on the blockchain or minted, you're wrong. They're going to continue minting the same comic books. It might not happen now, but it's going to happen eventually. Because in the real world, if you guys go to a comic book store today, they have facsimile covers of other comic books. Amazing Fantasy, maybe not Spider-Man 1. They got the Hobgoblin's first appearance. They got a Fantastic Four. They have a bunch of facsimile covers. The Hulk, they have a bunch of facsimile covers of reprints of the original one. So I ask you, and I want to know, what does that do? So here's the pros. The pro of having the first one is it is often considered more valuable and collectible due to their limited availability. Okay, so let's say today we got Rogue's first appearance. I believe we only got 10,000 editions of that comic book. There's some comic books on the app right now that we got 7,500 editions, right? 7,500 editions is not that big. And I think that this is why David Yu and the whole team doesn't really care about putting out that many edition sizes, because in the back of their head, they're probably going to reprint these comic books on Vivi. The thing is that these comic books might get reprinted on Vivi before Marvel reprints them themselves. And that's why they don't care about the 7,500 editions, because they can re-release it 5 years from now, and it's only going to make the first edition more valuable. That's what I think. Right? And another thing, if they reprint it, they're going to do a larger mint. That's why they're reprinting it, because the comic book is that much popular and nobody can afford the first edition. Nobody could afford. But when it comes to comic books and NFTs, it's the second edition anyways, because the original physical comic is the first edition. But you know what I mean. The first NFT, the first in the blockchain. Two, potential investment. Some first edition books can appreciate in value over time, especially if they become highly regarded or gain popularity. And that goes along the lines of, if we get 100 million users one day, we get 100,000 new users, we get whatever number of new users, people are gonna want to get Amazing Fantasy 15, and Vivi could definitely do a second run, a collector's edition or a limited edition. They can do that to please to make everybody else happy, to make everybody feel like they can afford it. But the original Amazing Fantasy 15 on Vivi is still going to be king as far as that is concerned. First in the blockchain. And that's an obvious one, right? That is the most important one. And I know that some people say that it's all about utility and utility will be king, but let's keep it 100. There could definitely be more utility, and we're going to talk about it in a minute, but it's still important to be the first in the blockchain, and people are always going to put value on that regardless of the utility. People are always going to put value on the first edition regardless of the utility. And that's what I think, okay? So now we're going to talk about the cons of the first edition book. So these are things that will not work in your favor by having the first edition book. So this is to say that they could possibly reprint Amazing Fantasy 15 in 5 years, and it could potentially be better than the first one that we have now. It could potentially be better, and we're going to talk about how it could be better. First editions are typically printed in smaller quantities, making them harder to find and potentially more expensive to acquire. And that's obvious. If I come into Vivi right now, I can go buy an Amazing Fantasy 15 NFT on Vivi and pay $400 for it. If we ever get 1 million new users on the app, that comic book is going to be beyond reach to a lot of people. It's going to be unobtainable to a lot of people because it's Amazing Fantasy 15. People understand the significance of that book, and people are going to go for it. People are going to come into the app already knowing this prior. So it's going to be a book that's going to just shoot to the moon if we ever get a million new users, right? So that is where first editions are typically printed in smaller. So that is a con if you're a new user. If you come into the app 5 years from now, it's going to suck because you're going to have to put up a lot of money to get these first edition books. First editions might lack improvements. Ooh, and this is an important one. First editions might lack improvements or revisions made in later editions, such as clarifications, updates, or additional content that enhances the overall reading experience. So this, to me, and obviously I wrote this, so in my mind, these comic books could definitely be enhanced. The later editions can definitely be better, and that's a con to having the first edition. But having the first edition, if you have the first edition, you can just sell that and get a bunch of second editions if you really wanted to. But they can definitely add content to the comic books to make them way better. What if the second edition comes out and the page is animated? How about the front page being animated? That would be legendary, right? What if there's a collectible at the end of the comic book? You open the comic book and there's a hologram. Boom. You get a Spider-Man jumping out of the page. Boom. The page panels move. It could be a whole different experience when they update these things. So they could definitely do a second edition run and update the comic book and make them that much better. Okay, so now let's talk about the pros of the second edition book. All right. These are the pros of having the second edition book. Besides the fact that we just talked about additions such as clarifications, updates, and additional content that enhances the overall reading experience. Something that I've really wish we had with the comic books, and I've traveled, obviously I travel, and sometimes when I'm on an airplane, I'm not able to read my comic book because I don't have Wi-Fi. I wish I was able to download my comic prior to the flight so I can read it during the flight without having to have Wi-Fi. I think that would be very, very cool. And I think that especially if we start dropping other types of books, magazines, literature, other types of books, this is going to be very, very beneficial to the experience and and the NFTs and as a whole. That's what I think. All right, so the pros of the second edition book: improved in quality. That's another thing. The second editions will definitely be better quality than the first edition. Second editions often address errors, typos, and other issues found in the first edition, resulting in an overall improved reading experience. This is something that I don't think applies to comic books because we don't want them to fix anything. I think that as a collector, when something has a flaw and it's the first edition, that's what makes it special. If you try to go back and fix things, it would ruin it. For example, let's say right now, there's a lot of comic books on the app that have mistakes. Okay, there's a lot of comic books on the app that have mistakes. We already know about them. Maybe I'll make a video about it. But there's a lot of comic books on the app that have mistakes. Either the color is wrong, they misspelled something, and it's in the cover. So there's mistakes on these comic books. I personally love the mistakes in the comic books. I don't want them to update it and fix it and digitally enhance the comic book, but they might eventually will do it. And that's what makes the first edition that much special, especially since they haven't cleaned them up or updated them. I love that. If they were to fix comic books, if they were to go back and fix the errors of comic books, the original errors that were put there by Stan Lee, Ditto, or any of these comic book guys back in the days, any mistakes that they did, I want to see them in the comic book. I don't want nobody to fix them. You're going to ruin the experience. The con. This is the pros of the second edition book: enhanced design or formatting. And that's something that would take place if we were in a metaverse type of situation, right? Because you can format the comic book to be readable in different platforms. You can update the comic book, and that thing that'll be legendary, right? Improved design elements, formatting, illustrations, or supplementary materials that enhance the visual appeal, or usability of the book. And this could totally take place depending on what platform you take it, because ideally, I would want to take my comic book into any platform out here in the digital world. I would like to take it into any metaverse space. I would like to open it and read it and display it. How come we can't display comic books yet? Somebody stop playing with me. Availability. Second editions are usually printed in larger quantities and are more widely available, making them easier to obtain. And I think this is a plus because the second edition book would definitely be overprinted. They're going to make too many of them. And that's what we want. And a lot of people are like, oh, you're going to make it less valuable because you overprinted. You guys said that about the Eye of Agamotto, and look at you now. The Eye of Agamotto is scarce. Now you can look back and wish they would have put out more secret rare Eye of Agamottos. But when they came out, you were like, oh, what are they doing? There are too many of them. But we never know what the point of these are, especially with Electra. People thought there was too many Electras. Now it's perfect because we could buy a $3 collectible and burn it. There's too many comic books. Well, buy the comic books, not financial advice. I'm buying comic books. I'm buying a lot of comic books. There's some comic books that I have 100 of. There's some comic books that I have 50 of. There's some comic books that I have 30 of. And I do that because you never know what's going to happen. A tweet could change anything. They can say a tweet of, hey guys, burn 5 Marvel comic books to get this special comic book. And you know it's coming. Also, second editions are usually printed in larger quantities and are more widely available, making them easier to obtain. This is still good also because if you reprint a comic book, it brings attention to the original one. If you reprint a comic book and you get second edition Amazing Fantasy 15, if I'm holding the original one, I'm not going to be mad about that. I'm actually going to be excited because there's going to be more people aware of the comic book. A lot of people are going to get the comic book and say, oh, what is this? Amazing Fantasy 15? Oh, this is the original, the first appearance of Spider-Man? Oh, this is the second edition. I wonder how much the first edition is going for. And that's where everybody's going to go look for that. Let's talk about the cons of the second edition book. Let's talk about the cons, right? Lower collectible value. And this is for the second edition book. So if people are worried, oh, the second edition is going to lower the quality or the value of my book today. I don't think so. I think that the second edition will have a lower collectible value. The second edition books are generally less valuable to collectors compared to the first edition due to their larger print runs and increased availability. And it's the original. Everybody wants an original. So let me know in the comments down below. What do you guys think about Vivi reprinting or Marvel starting their own platform with their own comic books? At the end of the day, I think it's a personal choice. Some individuals may prioritize the historical significance and rarity of a first edition book. A lot of people are just going to want the original one because that's what they value, while others may prefer the updated content and improved quality offered by the second edition, right? Because the second edition is going to bring you maybe different type of quality, a different type of reader experience. It might come with perks. You never know. So it depends, and I think that both can coexist. But something that I've thought about also is that if Marvel was to start their own NFT platform and they put out their own comic books, I don't think that they can really compare to Vivi in a sense, because Vivi could get the license to any comic book they want. So if Marvel puts out their own platform, they're only going to have Marvel comic books. Vivi doesn't only have Marvel comic books. They could put Tarzan, they could put Disney, so Disney becomes the Walmart. Disney becomes the hub for all the comic book collectors, the place where all the comic book collectors go to collect the comic books. And it almost makes Vivi more official than Marvel in a sense, because they already have Marvel. They have the first in the blockchain. Not only that, but they also have Disney's first in the blockchain. They also have Tarzan's first in the blockchain. And whatever DC company Dark Horse, any other comic book company that comes into the space only makes Vivi more legitimate. Now, if DC starts their own platform, that's going to be, which they did, which is legendary because now they have their own marketplace. But if Marvel does it, I almost think that Marvel messed up giving it to Vivi, because now Vivi is just the king of that, right? What do you guys think? Morning, bro. What's up, Smarty Pants? Good afternoon. Chiko Roku listening on a roll. Do you think they will stop producing any kind of paper books, magazines, etc., go all digital? No, I don't think so. I think that physical is still significant, and people will always collect physical items. Physical items are never going to go out of style. People are always going to collect physical items. I think that, and I go to comic book stores at least once a week, and I collect physical, real-life comic books. This week, I picked up the Power Rangers Ninja Turtles collab, the 505, and I've been collecting that every month because they've been releasing them every month, and there's a lot of comic books. Spider-Boy had a first appearance 2 weeks ago, and that comic book's going for $50 right now. And nobody would have ever known because they don't tell you. Like in the real world, comic collecting is a whole different animal. There's a lot of speculation going on and a lot of surprises. Sometimes the comic book companies don't tell you what the first appearance is going to be, and they just allow you to pre-order. And then when they ship it, people realize what it is, and then it becomes scarce. So that's what I think. So no, I don't think it's ever going to stop. I think that people are always going to collect physical, especially in the comic book world, because I'm going to tell you guys something. I know a lot of comic book collectors, a lot of legit comic book collectors. My friend, one of my boys, Steven Riddle, he has some physical comic books that are legendary. He has Thor's first appearance, first modern day appearance, the one we have on the app. He has that in a physical. He has everything in a physical. He's a comic book collector for over 30 years. He is beyond legit. And he will never, ever come into the digital space. I'm telling you right now, because I talk to him every week. He will never come into the digital space. He doesn't even know that I have comic book NFTs, because I don't want to get into that conversation with him, because he really doesn't like the NFT space. He really does not like the digital space. And I brought it up to him once in a while, like as a comment. I'm like, oh, would you ever get any of the digital ones? And as soon as you say NFT or digital, no, that's garbage. That's not real. This is real. This is, and but he doesn't get it. And it's okay, because it's not for everybody. So one last thing. I don't think that all the physical comic book collectors in the world, all the true diehard collectors, are going to come to Vivi. They're not going to come to Vivi. All these big comic book collectors in the real world, and that's what we expect, right? We always say to ourselves on Vivi, oh, when the real comic book collectors come here, it's going to be over. It's not going to happen. It's not gonna happen. But you know what's the beauty? That VV is creating a whole new breed of collectors that are not gonna go anywhere. Because how many people on VV have never collected a comic book and now are collecting comic books every week on VV? Because VV is creating the next generation of collectors. A lot of these real world collectors are not gonna come to VV, and that's just what it is. What's up, Big A? Good morning, man. Thank you for that question, Ledges. I appreciate that. But let me know what you guys think, man. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I would really, really like to know. Please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.
The green llama strike.